Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please, Mary.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Here.
Supervisor House,
Here.
Supervisor Fuhrer,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
Here.
Supervisor Messick.
Here.
Thank you.
Great. Next up is consent agenda. All matters listed under consent are considered to be action items that are routine and can be enacted in one motion. Supervisor Fuhrer has asked to remove item 136, and so we'll move that down to the first item under county departments. Any additional board comment or anything wish to be pulled from the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay, there's a first. There's a first and a second. Is there any public comment on the consent agenda? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. Next, we'll move on to special presentations, starting with item 135, 2025, receive presentation from CASA Yuba, a court-appointed special advocate for children. Good morning.
Morning, board. Thank you so much for having us. Can you hear me? Is that good? The microphone. Okay. My name is Katja Pollmann. I work for Child Advocates of Placer and Yuba County. Thank you so much for having us this morning. We did have a presentation. I'm not sure. Thank you. So we are court-appointed special advocate. The program is called CASA. It was started in the 70s by a judge who had to make a decision for a child to remove it or stay with a family. And he said, I can't make that decision because I only see that child a few times a year. So he said, I want to start a volunteer program where a volunteer sees that child every single week and reports back to me about how they're doing. So that's how CASA started. The CASA program can be in every county. We just started in Yuba County in 2023. And we just got permission to start in Sutter as well. We have been doing that in Placer County for the past 20 years. So our mission is to build a bridge between the most vulnerable in our community and volunteers who want to make a difference. We have about 400 volunteers recruited. And they see a child or a family every week. We have 60,000 foster kids in California, which is a huge number. Most of them are in LA County. In Sutter and Yuba, they're almost equal. The numbers, we have around 130 right now in Yuba on the wait list, and we're serving about 50. Look to Nicole because she's the one. So I don't have to say that foster kids go to a huge amount of trauma. Parents are called unsafe, so that's why the judge has to remove them, but it's still traumatic for them to be removed from home. What we provide is that one consistent adult that sees them every single week. The trauma and abuse, before the separation, then the trauma of being away from parents is huge. 60% of kids that are sex trafficked also have a background of foster care. These foster kids are just especially vulnerable, and predators see that and try to recruit them, and Placer County is one of those hubs. The trauma that I'm talking about is really changing the kids' mental and physical health. It's a lot of stress hormones that go through them. So there is an example from Dr. Nadine Burke, and she explained that if you are in stress, imagine you're going through the woods, there's a bear. Stress hormones are flooding through you, you're in fight or flight position, And that's normal if you have that one situation. But for these kids, these bears are coming home every single night and they have that stress pumping through them every single night. And that changes their mental health, it changes their physical health. So the trauma goes on for the rest of their lives. How we help, as we said, we train volunteers. They go through a training that Nicole will let explain. It's a 30-hour training. It's in person and there's homework to do. They're mandatory reporters as well. These are just the services we provide. So we have the volunteers. We have an extra fund for them. It's called the Simple Heroes Fund, where we provide extracurricular activities for them. We just want to make it as normal as possible for these kids. So we want them to participate in prom. We want them to participate in sports activities. So that's why we have a fund. Give it over to Nicole.
Hi, Nicole Rubio. I'm the Recruitment and Engagement Coordinator for the Yuba-Sutter office. Excited to add that Sutter on there by the end of the year. That just means we get to serve more children, right? Okay, so we train about 125, probably 130 volunteers every year through our training program. We have 30 hours of training. It's a hybrid program, so we have both in person and online. So we have some programs that are coming to Yuba. We have some that are being, CASA is our flag. That is our main program working with the children and youth. We have a few programs from Placer that are coming. We are starting our Be Bold program, which is those that are at risk or in human trafficking. So those are our highest risk foster youth. And I believe we have possibly 3 or 4 that we've already matched in Yuba that are already being served. Our K-9 for Kids program is a Placer County program. We have a pretty robust program here in Yuba already, so we are not going to be bringing that here.
I want to say something about family services, sorry. We are very excited that we started family services here in Yuba County as well. We are one of the only programs that decided we want to help the families as well. So the kid gets removed, the families get a huge case plan of things they have to do, get clean and sober, find housing. It's a very short time window they're going through, and we want to make sure that these parents have a chance to follow this case plan. So we assign a volunteer as well to them. We have staff that has lived experience, so they have been through that path and they know what they need to do. So we started in Yuba County as well. A social worker said to us, it's really for these parents. So we have different family services program. We start with we can help them as soon as the kid is removed, but we can also help after the removal to get them on a safe path. Sorry, Nicole.
That's okay. Or the family service guru. So we do have our parent empowerment program, and this is a voluntary program for the parents. It is offered to them. They opt to sign in for this. They have an online support group, and it seems it's been doing wonders. Personally, the child that I advocate for, her father's in the program, and he has been doing amazing since being added to this program. It is a huge help for our personal situation. Okay, Kinship Allies, that's a program again in Placer that is coming alongside the family members that are housing the children.
It's oftentimes that the judge like to move the steps up to the game. We have just a pair of grandparents that took in 5 grandkids in a bedroom apartment on a fixed income. That's really tough. We try to help them by providing, grandparents were sleeping on the couch, so we provide air mattress. It's really crucial that we help that relationship, because if grandparents are overwhelmed, then the kid has to be removed. And in this case, it was 5 grandkids that oftentimes they're separated. We really want to make sure the allies relationships are solid, so that's why.
Okay, and so how can you help? Well, we currently have a waiting list for Yuba County Dependency Court of 140 children that are at risk in foster care that need an advocate for them. So I am looking for volunteers And if it is not something that you can do, please spread the word. Gary, thank you so much for your shares on Facebook. I really appreciate you. Spread the word. It might not be for you, but it's going to be for somebody that you know and care about. We ask an hour minimum a week to spend with a child, and it's amazing. It has so enriched my life. These little girls that I have are just amazing. I look forward to my Wednesday visits. It's fun. And you're making a change in their life. So I'm going off script, as a CASA advocate, you are the one stable person in their life while they are going through the dependency court program. The social workers are going to change, possibly. The foster homes are going to change. And you are the only unpaid person that's there for the entire 12 to 18 months that they're in foster care. And that builds a pretty special bond with that child. We have a CASA who was in foster care, and she says that she remembers to this day every person that stepped out and helped her while she was in foster care. So it does make a huge impact on these children. You're able to give them a voice where they've never had one before. Even as little as, I want to see my grandma. And then the judge instituted grandma visits. I mean, it seems so minor to us, but it was the world to her. Advocating for mental health or advocating for extra help in school, that is what a CASA does. Basically, we like to say about an hour and a half a week, because you do have a little bit of online logging, but the majority is you spend a minimum of an hour a week with the child, and you're changing the course of their history. That's it. So thank you for allowing us to come and share. I do have some flyers in the back if anybody would like to grab one, the public too. We are having our first ever Yuba-Sutter fundraiser, and I'm so excited. Red Robin has opened their doors to us. So March 31st, anytime during the day that they are open, if you go in and you purchase a meal, 20% will go to CASA if you mention CASA. And I'm going to have a table in the lobby with flyers, so it's going to be hard to miss. Us. So thank you so much for having us, and we really appreciate any support that we can get.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for coming today. Any questions or comments from board members?
We are at 628 D Street.
628 D Street. I stopped by there one time, I thought.
I think you came by during one of the parades, I believe.
Okay.
Supervisor House?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for bringing this to our county and spreading it to Sutter County as well. If I had more time, I'd sign up maybe in the future. But I definitely will spread the word at your request. So thank you.
You're still on my short list, by the way.
Supervisor Fuhrer, do you have something?
On one of your early slides, you had a number, I think it was 8% for Yuba County, 6 and change for Sutter County. I'm curious what the range of percentages are as far as children in foster care in a county. Is 8% on the high end, I assume? Is it range up to 10, or no, we're one of the worst? What is the range?
Yuba County is pretty high. We have a very high generational foster care system here. Well, we have 140 on the wait list. We have 53 that are being served. So you're a math person, do the math on that one. We have a lot of children in our dependency court. And it seems like every other day I hear a case manager saying, oh, we have another detained. So it's like our numbers are growing. So our goal is to help change that. And I know I talked to my friend Johnny, and my goal is to keep people off his river bottoms and to keep people out of our prisons by showing them there's a different way to live. You don't have to live the way that you've been raised. You can make a decision and make a different life. So our CASAs expose them to things that maybe they've not been exposed to. The museum, they can take them to the zoo, the parks, different things that maybe they've not been exposed to.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to thank you for the presentation. I went to the first CASA meeting at the Brick. I don't know, when was that, last year or a year and a half ago or so?
That was, I would say, that would be August of 2023,
Okay.
September, August.
And wow, what you guys have done in that short time frame, it's very impressive.
Thank you.
Great. I just want to thank you guys for the work you're doing, and especially also thank your volunteers. I know you can't do it without them. So, and hopefully you'll get some more folks to sign up. So I know it's certainly something very important. So,
And we're fun. We have a good time too. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
So much.
Okay, next we're going to move on to the next special presentation, item 152, 2025, receive presentation from Yuba Watershed Protection and Fire Safe Council regarding the 2024 updated Yuba County Foothills Community Wildlife Protection Plan.
Good morning.
Morning.
That was a mouthful. Huh? Great. Good morning. My name is Sandy Huckins, and as you heard, I'm with the Yuba Watershed Protection and Fire Safe Council, and we are here today to present our update to the original 2014 Yuba County Foothills Community Wildfire Protection Plan. And we are hoping for the board's approval today. This has been a collaborative effort over the last 15 months, encompassing our group, our partners such as CAL FIRE, Tahoe and Plumas National Forest, Hamptonville Community Partnership, UC Extension, Yuba County RCD, Cal OES, and local forestry companies, as well as the residents of the Yuba Foothills and Deer Creek Resources. Today, Nate Daly and Zeke Lunder are going to summarize the plan for you and show you their slideshow. Thank you.
Morning.
All right. Thank you for having us. My name is Zeke Lunder. This is Nate Daly. We're wildland fire scientists and fire behavior experts. We wrote the original 2014 Yuba Foothills Community Wildfire Protection Plan. Community wildfire protection plans are basically a gatekeeper document that funding agencies use to determine priority for funding grants for wildfire mitigation. So hazardous fuel removal, home hardening, other state and federal grants. And basically what happened in the past when I first started these programs was there was a lot of kind of nepotism, and if your cousin was the fire safe council director, then you'd get a grant and cut the brush on your house. And after a while, the agencies figured out that it wasn't an efficient way to spend public money, and it also wasn't creating better outcomes. There's a limited amount of money to fund fuels projects for the entire country. And so we need to make sure that we fund projects that are in the kind of most tactically useful locations so they actually can help during a wildfire. So this project that we've been working on, we look at all the vegetation, we look at where the homes are built, we look at the capacity of each fire district as far as their equipment, the response times. We map out all the assets at risk, the homes, the communities, the post offices, restaurants, other things that a community needs to function. And then we look at what kind of fires we've had in the past on the landscape. And then we kind of look from our perspective as fire experts, we look at where you could do projects that would have the most likelihood of protecting assets. That all goes into a document and ends out with a project list, and the projects are ranked by priority. And then if you have a project that's in the document, then when you go out for grant funding, the first thing they want to know is whether or not this has been through a process like a CWPP, where the local fire experts, the local agencies have gone through some sort of rhyme and reason to determine what projects need to be done. So one of the most important things we look at when we look at the fire hazard is what kind of fire history we've had in the area. In the case of Yuba County, we haven't had any real big destructive fires to speak of in the foothills in the past couple of decades compared to, say, Butte County, where we've had the Bear Fire, the Camp Fire. And so that's concerning in that means we've got a lot of fuel out there. And one thing that was sobering for us in this project is if you take the Bear Fire footprint and look at where it came out of the middle fork of the Feather River, and it ran 35 miles in a single day down to Lake Oroville. If you move that fire 10 miles south, we wouldn't have probably needed to do this plan because you wouldn't have any communities left in the foothills. We would have burned up Dobbins, Oregon House, Brownsville. And so that shows you the potential. The fuels in Yuba County are the same fuels basically that you have in Plumas County and Butte County that drove those destructive fires. One of the big challenges in the foothills here is that unlike somewhere like Nevada City or Paradise, where you've got a kind of defined community and a defined edge to it, where you can actually go out and thin around the community in a focused manner, the kind of scattered development in the Yuba foothills, you've got a lot of larger lots. You don't really have these traditional kind of community boundaries. So it's harder for us to go out and say like, hey, just thin around town because the people are spread all over the landscape. That makes it difficult to do these traditional things that you would do like fuel breaks, where you can go out and put a project that's going to protect the town by just thinning one area. It's more like you have to treat the entire landscape or you have to focus on where the homes are. So a lot of the recommendations we have in this project are to focus on the defensible space around specific homes and on projects which harden existing homes. For example, home hardening projects, some places the Fire Safe Council will get a big roll of vent screen, of fine screen that people can come down and get at the fire station and go up and put over their existing vents. There's been a lot of research done in the past couple of decades on what causes homes to burn down, and a lot of it is the embers, right? And so we focus a lot on cutting brush and everything else, but when it comes down to it, in a big fire like the Bear Fire, you've got ember storms that are rolling out ahead of the fire. Those embers go into your vents, they go under your house, they go under your deck, they burn your house down. So this document kind of goes through the range of different treatments that are available to mitigate things like that. And then I guess I'll get to that in a different slide. So our process for evaluating the risk is we worked with all the partners that do projects already, like the County Roads Department does roadside thinning, the forestry, private forestry companies have been thinning their forests with grant money. And we compile all that information from what's already been done into a single place. One thing that was nice about doing this project as a follow-up to the 2014 plan was that in 2014, we proposed a lot of projects. And then to come back 10 years later and see that a lot of that work actually has been done, that's gratifying for us, because as planners, oftentimes we write a plan and it sits on a shelf and nothing really changes. So in the case of Yuba County, a lot of the recommendations that were made 10 years ago have been followed up. And so a lot of what we end up recommending in this project is to keep maintaining those projects that have been already done, because it's a lot more efficient to go out and re-thin an area that was thin 10 years ago than to go into a new area and have to start over. We did field surveys. We drove around a lot in the foothills. We used remote sensing like satellite imagery and aerial LiDAR, which is laser scanning that has been done of the foothills to map the vegetation. And we spent a lot of time talking to fire chiefs. And we used the data that we created from the LiDAR and from the satellite imagery to run fire behavior models. So these are basically computer programs that we use that we can put a fire start on the landscape and tell the model what the weather is. We can pick the bad historic weather, and we can see how far is the fire spread in a given amount of time. Is it something that would be fightable with aircraft, with hand crews. But we try to model out scenarios. What's a specific scenario that threatens Dobbins? Is it a fire that starts to the east with an east wind? Is it a fire that starts to the south in the bottom of the canyon with a south wind? We use historic weather data and the existing fuels and the past fire behavior to run these scenarios. And then those inform where we think the project should go. You know, for example, west winds, how common are they? If you have a place where you're trying to put in a fuel break, is your scenario that there's more of a threat from an east wind, or is it from a west wind? If so, if it's an east wind, you want it to end on the east side of town, right? So we use a lot of data to kind of target those. We also look at where the highly valued assets at risk are. So in this case, we're looking at homes, primarily homes. We look where there's schools, summer camps, power line corridors, electrical substations, built infrastructure, roads and access points, businesses, and communication sites. All those things, the map that we have on the screen here shows kind of color-coded where you've got these kind of concentrations of assets at risk. And as you see, it's mainly along the main roads where you've got access needs. You don't want to burn people. You know, most people who die in wildfires die in their cars, stuck in traffic, evacuating. So that's been one of the reasons that the county has done a lot of work on roadside thinning, is that's the, where you've got the access and also where it's critical that we know that we can't reduce fire behavior across the entire landscape, but if we can thin within a flame length distance of the road, then we know that if someone's stuck in a car there evacuating, it's less likely they'll get burned up. So this mapping of valued assets helps us focus in. Obviously, we can't treat the entire county, but we want to focus it where we can get the most benefit for the money that we have. Out of all that, we in the plan, we look at what are the different strategies the county can adopt to reduce their exposure to wildfire losses. Those include education projects. You know, a lot of people who've maybe moved into the foothills from elsewhere might not understand the critical risk that they face from wildfire. We look at ways that people can reduce the ignitability of their structures. One thing that you've got going against you in the foothills here is that a lot of the housing is older and in poor condition. We did a lot of work in Paradise after the fire, and before the fire in Paradise, there were a lot of kind of cool old shaggy shacks and outbuildings and kind of people. It was funky, but it was cool. That's what people liked about Paradise. What you didn't see after the fire in Paradise was a lot of funky old shacks. The houses that survived in Paradise were the new houses, the houses that were built, that were maintained, that had nice tight roof corners. So we look at age of building also is one of those things that affects whether or not it's going to burn. So in this document, we have recommendations on what types of structures need the most hardening. We look at the capabilities of each fire department, and we make some recommendations in here about specific types of apparatus that they should look at acquiring, such as Type 6 engines, which are a lighter, like a F550 type chassis. Some people call them rescues. They're good for making access on the smaller roads. They're more nimble, more flexible. By having that in a document like that, it makes it easier for these districts to go out to FEMA and ask for grant money to get a specific type of apparatus. And then the other main mitigation strategy is hazardous fuels reduction, actually the cutting of brush. Talk a little bit about roadside fuels projects, and one of the ways that we assessed that was we set up a GoPro on our truck, and we drove and we collected about 60,000 photos. So this is just kind of an example of what we're looking at, and then we have a computer program that we've written that processes all these photos and automatically maps out where the heavy brush is along the road. But Nate's going to talk a bit about the specific types of projects that we're recommending.
Yeah, I'm Nate Daly, also at Deer Creek Resources. We were talking about the community meetings before. Just wanted to thank Supervisor Messick for coming to all those. Big help. One of the main projects we recommend throughout the project area, which is the Foothills, is reduction of ladder fuels. So we're talking about low-hanging branches and shrubby vegetation that gives fire a pathway to climb up into the canopy, which can then accelerate fire spread and intensify destructive potential. So ladder fuel reduction can also improve firefighter access and safety, and enhances the overall health of a forest by reducing spread of disease and insect infestations. So it's prohibitively expensive to thin the entire foothills. So the CWPP identifies strategic priority areas for ladder fuel reduction. These are in a series of maps in section 5.3 of the document. We point out areas designated to protect high value assets that are threatened by potentially high or very high fire line density, which are two of the outputs we were talking about earlier, where there's a high potential and where we have assets that we want to protect. So there's been a ton of fuels work that has already been completed in the project area. So as Zeke mentioned, we recommend a lot of re-entry into existing fuel treatments to maintain them, and then filling in the gaps of other places that would be strategic. We talk about potential temporary refuge areas. These aren't necessarily places for long-term evacuation, but places that people can go quickly that are nearby populated areas to wait out a fire. So we're talking about paved parking lots, boat launches, areas without flammable vegetation near water or wet meadows, places that have burned previously, schools, athletic fields, big open areas, right? So we designated 20 potential temporary refuge areas that we recommend be vetted by the county OES and then advertised to residents as like, here's a place you can go that's nearby when fire gets overwhelming. We recommend some prescribed fire projects in the plan. And wildfires are part of the natural ecosystem and support resilience and health for many plant and animal species. So historically, there were lots of fires through here, but there's been suppression over the last 100 years, which is why we have so much fuel spilled up. So we recommend different areas that would be optimal kind of prescribed burn units. We recommend that the county, perhaps the Fire Safe Council, stand up a prescribed burn program of volunteers, something we were working on up in Butte County. I'm going out to burn 7 acres on 2 homes in Magalia tomorrow. It's a group of volunteers who get trained to do this, and they can do thinning, burning. We recommend standing up a PBA, Prescribed Burn Association. And then we have several code, policy, and kind of enforcement recommendations. The plan recommends that the county develop a vegetation maintenance ordinance for private property owners to reduce wildfire risks. There's a lot of vacant or undeveloped lots kind of pose a unique challenge in the project area. They accumulate a lot of growth. They're not taken care of. So these areas can be a dangerous fuel source. We recommend some kind of program to require absentee owners to still maintain reduction of hazardous fuels on their property. We recommend wildfire analysis requirements for new foothill developments. So there's some pre-development planning that goes into it to talk about how a fire could affect any potential new developments. There's some discussion in the CWPP about wildfire and fuels mitigation near known homeless encampments. And then we talk about, we recommend that the county seek some funding for the transportation department to improve egress there's some pretty hairy roads up there. And while there's been a lot of work done, there's room for improvement. And then another recommendation, as Zeke mentioned before, is educational outreach program. This can be as simple as billboards or mailers that go out to people, remind them, hey, you need to take care of your property. It's your responsibility. And then we have some other recommendations, kind of, this is like the miscellaneous department here. Continued support for the Camptonville Community Partnership Biomass Energy Project, which is getting started. Recommend funding, development, construction for a training center in Smartsville. This is something we talked about with the Smartsville Fire Protection District Chief, to create a facility that would house students, put them through fire training, and development and education program. There's existing models that exist in the state that we could go off of. Type 6 fire engines, as Zeke mentioned, the UTVs with skids for reaching inaccessible areas easier, and improving cell phone coverage in some spotty areas. Camptonville Fire Department also identified needs for utility truck and new radios and pagers. So we put those recommendations in there too. We want to put all the recommendations in this plan so they exist, so when funding opportunities come up, we can point back to the plan and say, this has been identified as a need. So the document itself, if you looked at it, is much longer, goes into all this in great detail. There's tons of mapping available, and that's our presentation. Did you close? Yeah, we're just asking for, yeah, we're asking for approval on
So
the CWPP.
before we open it for board comments and questions, just to let you know, I don't think the board has actually seen the CWPP yet, and it was on the agenda as a presentation. So with consensus from the board, I think we're happy to consider approval on the consent agenda at our next meeting, since you've already given the presentation portion. Okay. So is there consensus from the board to put it on consent at the next meeting? So you can work with the clerk of the board to do that. And so I just wanted to give you a heads up. We can't actually approve it today, but hopefully we can approve it in the near future. And then I'll open it to questions and comments from the board.
Here, you've got a fire safe community in Lake Francis, I think, Lake Francis Estates.
Yes, yeah, there's a number of fire safe communities.
Okay, have we got any more?
Yeah, do you know that you have?
Yes, fire-wise communities, yes, we actually do have, or we have one up on Moonshine Road in Camptonville, and our most recent is on Regent Way in Oregon House, and we have Concord Trail that's just about, they're waiting for their approval in Oregon House, and we have a handful of others that are in the process of putting their applications in through NFPA.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question about the Rose Bar Emergency Response Training Center. Can you tell me a little more about what that would mean, or is that something that's going to be grant funded from an exterior source that we haven't identified yet, or no, that's something that's already in infantile stage? Or
it's kind of a wish list item.
Okay.
It was something we were talking about during our Smartsville community meeting. We pointed some property out behind the building we're up working at, and he's like, I'd love to open up some kind of training center here that modeled after other similar programs. So we added it to the plan so we can point back to it.
And so what would it need to make that happen? Is that a $10,000 grant? Is that $1 million grant? What would it be to start a training center?
We didn't get into finances with the chief, but yeah, we're talking about facilities and probably bringing in instructors. I don't have a number.
Okay. You mentioned prescribed burns, and I was curious about that. Obviously, from the air quality management side, there's an issue. The state has a very definite policy on not doing certain things. So the prescribed burns you described was private property, people taking the initiative and doing it on their property. Is that something that happens on state property?
Yeah, so the Prescribed Burn Association movement has been building in counties all over the state. You can check out calpba.org. It has information on that. And for the most part, it's happening on private property. Okay. And the PBAs kind of provide training and kind of a call list. So like the Butte PBA, it's basically an email list, and you don't have to have any sort of qualification to volunteer. And then in Butte County, the Resource Conservation District provides qualified leadership, burn bosses, and contract resources like private fire contractors to support the burns. Most of the burning is not happening on state lands. In the project area, the fish and game property, fish and wildlife area is kind of this area that needs a lot of work. But for the most part, the PBAs are operating on private lands.
Okay, so obviously that limits the effectiveness if the issue is the state lands. But
the federal lands for the most part, I would say.
Okay, and the federal lands, do they do prescribed burns?
They do prescribed burns, and in Butte County, the PBA, they've got an agreement in place where PBA volunteers can come and work on Forest Service burns, provide kind of some of the labor.
Okay, and there hasn't been an air quality situation where they limit, because it seems to me that I can't even do campfire in certain situations because of the air quality situation.
Right, yeah, so the PBA burns in Butte County, you have to go through the smoke management process. In Butte County, you can burn up to 10 acres on a burn day without a smoke management plan. If you want to burn more than 10 acres, you have to work with the Air District to write a smoke management plan.
Okay, great. And then my other questions were in regards to road safety. You mentioned earlier, I assume that Paradise was an outlier as far as that's where most of the fatalities occurred, was in the traffic of the evacuation attempt. But you guys made it sound like, no, that's pretty common in all fire situations where there's mass casualties. Is it just Paradise that we were using for that particular example, or no, it's...
That's in our experience in working on lots of fires around the state, like the Cedar Fire, the Tunnel Fire in Oakland Hills. Generally, a lot of people die in their cars.
Okay. And so, one of the things we did in our consent agenda is we did 34 miles of fire breaks, was one of the things that we approved. I'm curious, that is the most effective way to prevent fatalities, you would say then?
That's important. It is, you have a kind of unique situation in that you have a low density of population over a large area.
Right.
So it becomes hard to, in some places it's really straightforward to say like, hey, there's 800 homes that all evacuate down Neal Road or something like that. And it makes sense. It's harder in Yuba County in that you have people scattered all over the place.
Right.
But we recommended most of your major county roads should get treatment. They're bottlenecks on a lot of them where there's been work that's been done and then you may have, a mile that is overgrown. And the problem here is just that your vegetation grows back so quickly that a lot of work that was done following our plan 10 years ago is already, you can't even tell it happened.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. It's nice to see a wrap up of all the community meetings we had. I'll follow up with you, Seth. The Air Quality Management District has different rules up in the hills than we have down here in the valley. So I have that to share on my social media. Just thank you for the presentation. Very well done.
Anything else from the board? Okay, great. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you.
So next we are going to move on to public communications. Any person may speak about any subject of concern, provided it is within the jurisdiction of the Board of Supervisors, and not already on today's agenda. The total amount of time allotted for receiving such public communications shall be limited to a total of 15 minutes, and each individual or group will be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Prior to this time, speakers are requested to fill out a request to speak card if you're here in the room. And if you're on Zoom, you can raise your hand. And no board action can be taken on comments made under this heading. Mary, are there any public comments for items not on the agenda?
Through the chair, no.
Okay, great. So seeing that, we will move on to county departments, and we'll start with the item that was pulled from the consent agenda, item 136, 2025. Health and Human Services approve MOU between Yuba County Health and Human Services, Yuba County Probation, and Sutter Health and Human Services to retain and provide oversight of a qualified provider of regional family urgent response system services. Morning, Tony.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair and members of the board. My name is Tony Gordon. I'm the Deputy Director for Yuba County Child and Adult Protective Services at the Health and Human Services Department. I am coming before you today to recommend that the Board of Supervisors approve the Memorandum of Understanding between Yuba County Health and Human Services Department, Yuba County Probation Department, and Sutter County Health and Human Services Department to retain and provide oversight of a qualified provider of a regional family urgent response system, or FERS, and for that term of a MOU for July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2025, and authorize the chair to execute. Now, FERS is a coordinated statewide, regional, and county level system designed to provide timely state-level phone-based response and county-level in-home, in-person mobile response teams, a lot of fancy words there, during terms of instability to preserve the relationships of caregivers and foster children or youth. So basically what it is the FERS system includes a toll-free hotline that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it is staffed with counselors trained in conflict resolution and de-escalation techniques for children and youth impacted by trauma in the foster care system. So a very specific niche for those individuals. Now, the state hotline staff are trained on risk assessments, which enable the staff workers to provide the most appropriate de-escalation and conflict resolutions to families or youth that are calling for services. What they're basically doing is at that point at the state level of the phone call, they're trying to de-escalate the crisis that the youth or the families are going through without having to send a mobile response team. They are trained to provide advice on how to handle the certain situations. If that is not feasible during the phone calls, the county will then assemble a mobile response team, and the state will call the mobile response team, provide them with the warrant handoff, and basically explain to them the situation that's taking place and make recommendations on the type of team or the amount of individuals that should be responding to the crisis. Now, after that evaluation during that telephone call, again, if warranted, the mobile response team is required to address the immediate situation. And county mobile response and standard stabilization teams are also available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And a significant note is that counties are mandated to establish these teams to serve current and foster youth. And these mandates are found under Welfare and Institutions Code 16526 through 16530 and also AB 79. The teams will respond within 1 hour, but not to exceed 3 hours in extenuating circumstances for urgent needs, or same-day responses within 24 hours for non-urgent situations and face-to-face responses. Teams include staff with specialized training in trauma and the foster care system. They provide in-home de-escalation, stabilization, and support the services that include face-to-face contact in conjunction with specialty mental health services. And that's another important caveat of the specialty mental health services. That's a requirement of those teams. These teams also identify the underlying causes of the instability. They observe the youth and caregivers in the interaction. They help diffuse the situations. They work with the youth and the caregivers, and they also make recommendations for further treatment or processes or supports that can help maintain the stabilization of the youth in the placement. So the benefits of that are they do prevent placement moves. It provides a trauma-informed alternative for families who previously reported to calling 911 or law enforcement. So that's something that we want to provide, and a system for individuals to call so that we are not calling law enforcement to handle those crisis situations. Because sometimes these calls from the mobile response teams, when they do respond, they're there for hours at a time helping the youth or the families. They might take the youth to the park or to go to lunch and talk about some of the things. Law enforcement is not able to provide that service. These also do reduce hospitalizations, law enforcement contacts, and again, they also develop ongoing support services beyond the initial mobile response, and they later coordinate with our social workers or behavioral health for the services that the youth need to maintain that placement. Now, at the beginning of this implementation of this actual project back in 2021, Yuba-Sutter and Butte counties developed a tri-county implementation plan. And at a state level, that has been discussed at several meetings, and the plan that was submitted by Yuba-Sutter and Butte has been used as a model approach and set an example for other counties in providing the services under the best practices of philosophy. I am happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Tony. Are there any questions from board members?
Yeah, so We answered about 55 calls, I think, for a cost of over $450,000. It's about $9,000 a call. I'm curious, when we do this, what is the source of that funding, the $455,000?
So you are correct in about 51 calls, but it was not $450,000. That is our allocation that we have to provide the program, but our cost was not that total amount. So Sutter County did not get the total $450,000, and they don't break it down to say, you have $450,000 and you got one call this year, we're going to charge you $450,000. It's not based upon that per the contract. So I will say across the state, and if this is the direction that you're going, last year, this was a controversial program with the shortfalls that the state was facing. This was actually on the chopping block as one of the programs that was not going to be allocated for this fiscal year. And at the last minute, it came through. There was some direction from the state, and they did provide the funding, the allocation for this program. So as far as is it underperforming based upon the allocation? Yeah, there's indications that it is an underperforming program across the state, not just in Yuba County. I think there was over 5,000 phone calls last year at a state level for across all of California. Each county is allocated $450,000 to provide this program. Other than Los Angeles, they get about $900,000 a year. So it is you call, you do get a certain allocation, you do invoice for that. There are costs that are associated with this program. There is 24 hours a day, 7 days, so you do have some responses that have to be a team that has to be available. I guess the best way direction would be is think of it like a fire department. They're getting paid, and sometimes you'll see 4 guys at Food Max or wherever, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, they're getting paid to sleep or do those things, but they have to be available to respond, and so you have to do that. So you're on the right track of saying there was 51 phone calls. We had an allocation of $450,000, but our total allocation for the year was not sent back to the state for reimbursement.
Thank you for clarifying that. So we did not receive the $450,000. We received some smaller portion.
We receive $450,000 in our pool, but if we do not allocate and use those funds, then we don't, Sutter County or ourselves do not to use it as discretionary funds. It goes back to the state.
Okay. Do you know approximately how much we did use?
Yeah, I think our average for the year was per month was about $12,000 a month.
Okay, so we used half of it.
Yeah, 130,000 about, yeah.
Okay. And then the number of times, and so you said it was on the chopping block because of other counties feeling it was also underperforming. This is state funding. We have no control over there's no efficiency level at our side that we can change anything, because you said it was state mandated that there be this program.
Yeah, it's a state mandated program. I do believe we are looking at other options if it is a mandated. I think part of my responsibility as the deputy director over child welfare and a leadership role is to evaluate programs that are mandated, like you're saying, which is a shall. If this was a should contract, then I would have to have some serious considerations based upon the underperformance of this program if that was something that we would institute. As far as if we're talking about the quality of the service when we do respond, that's been to par. It's an entity that we use a lot for other functions in child welfare, so I have no issues or concerns about the quality of the service. It's the quantity, and I think we have done things to also be proactive in our outreach. So we work with families, we go to the colleges, we work with resource families. Anytime a social worker is placing a child in a home, we provide them with magnets. We tell, put this phone number in your cell phone and that's who you call. But, I think back to when I had my son and they gave me a magnet for poison control, right? But in a crisis moment, if I'm there, I'm not going to remember what that phone call, and unfortunately, a lot of phone calls still go to law enforcement 911.
All right. Thank you for clarifying so much, Tony. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Any additional board comments or questions?
I had a question. It seems not just this one, but other ones, we're approving this from July of 24 to June 30th of 25. Shouldn't we be approving it for next year as well? It's like there's only a couple months left.
Well, we're not sure if the funding will be available for next year. Okay. So as for the previous year, the funding, all indications were that this program was not going to be allocated. And at the last minute, the May revise, they did say, here's this funding. and the change that took place from the previous years when we had this funding coming to us, Supervisor, was that we used to get the money directly for us and we would have the invoice, which made us to have an MOU. Now this money goes directly to Sutter County to provide that. So that was the reason at that point in time we felt like an MOU was not necessary. We reached out to the state to see if they could give us some guidance, and they left it up to us or disposal if we wanted to. And so when we did have an MOU, we understood that there were some underperforming metrics. And so we put in some caveats about more outreach to the community. We felt that was going to be important if we were going to be taking this funding on, that we should be more proactive in that approach.
Thank you.
Yes, we will probably be in the same situation in May when the May revise comes out. If this program is funded, we'll be back in the same situation to be like, are we going to continue with this route, or is there a different avenue that we can do to try to implement the first program?
Thank you. Anything else?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you, Tony. Okay, next we're going to move on to item 133, 2025. Yuba-Sutter Economic Development Corporation adopt resolution approving the 2025 to 2030 SEDS 5-year update and the 2024 SEDS annual performance report and Appendix 1 of the Public Works projects. Morning, Rachel. Morning, Brenda.
Just hold on one moment. There we are. Sorry, little technical difficulty. Good morning, Chairman Bradford, members of the board, Rachel Downs. I am one of your deputy directors from Community Development, overseeing both planning and economic development. And I wanted to kick off today's presentation by just giving a little bit of context for our overall Yuba County economic development efforts and how our regional SEDS fits into that effort. There we go. All right, so first, big context here. I just want to provide a definition for what is economic development, because as we know, this terminology can often mean so many things to so many different people, and it can also be taken in a lot of different directions. And so giving a baseline definition of economic development would be about enhancing the overall well-being and quality of life for the community through the creation and utilization of physical, human, financial, and social assets. Oops. Really struggling with technology this morning, sorry. Having a technological meltdown over here. Sorry about that, everybody. All right, and we're back. So that being said, in Yuba County, we've established 5 different pillars to really give framework to economic development. The first is strategic planning and resilience, which is where you can see the comprehensive economic development strategy, the SEDS, fits squarely into this pillar. Additionally, we have business retention and expansion efforts, attraction and marketing, talent and workforce development, and small business support. So those are kind of our 5 guiding pillars of economic development. There we go. All right, and I wanted to provide some additional context about the alignment with the SEDS and our Yuba County strategic plan. So in our Yuba County strategic plan, your board has guided staff and set strategic priorities. One of those is a community of participation, and how that aligns with the SEDS is that the Yuba-Sutter Economic Development Corporation, YSEDC, has done an excellent job in the development of this plan to bring together numerous stakeholders throughout the county, whether they're public agencies, private agencies, businesses, nonprofits, and even just community groups. And this collective works together to establish a SWOT analysis for the whole region. And additionally, an additional strategic priority is economic development. And so under economic development, one of the things that the SEDS does is helps establish a regional competitive advantage. And what I mean by that is it's really important to remember that site selection and business decisions often happen first at the continent level. Like, do we want to be located in Asia, in America, or North America, and really global decisions like that. And then it gets down to the country within that continent. And then from that country, typically the state, and then into the metro market, in our case, Greater Sacramento. And then, and only then, does it typically get down to the sub-region. And what's valuable about the SEDS is it helps establish what is our competitive advantage as a region within that context. And then also under economic development is it's really important to identify what our targeted industries are. And so through this SEDS process, we're able to establish what are our current industries and what are those targeted industries, which would be agriculture, defense, other wood, fiber, and construction materials. And then lastly is infrastructure. One of the strategic priorities in our county strategic plan is infrastructure. And that's something that your board has been incredibly supportive of, and our staff has been very diligent about working toward. And as those projects, namely public works projects, are included in this SEDS document, it allows them to be eligible for not only EDA funding, but also other federal funding opportunities. And so similar to, as the Fire Safe Council mentioned, when these projects are included in a larger plan, it's very easy for staff to point to those plans and say, we've thought about this in a regional context. We have the buy-in collectively from the community, and this is not a one-off project, but this is a strategic and intentional part of our strategy. So with that, I want to hand it over to Brenda Stranix with the Yuba-Sutter Economic Development Corporation to share with you more about the SEDS update. Found it.
Thank you, Chairman Bradford and Board of Supervisors. I'm Brenda Stranix with the Yuba-Sutter Economic Development Corporation. Happy to be here today to give you an annual update, which is customary, but also asking for approval of the 5-year plan that will carry us into 2030. So I'm going to go briefly through some data points that is going to have a
Officers.
So again, Brenda Stranix, Yuba-Sutter Economic Development Corporation. I'd also like to recognize both my board chair and vice chair happen to be in the room. Mary Langsdorf is our chair of the corporate board, and John Nicoletti is our vice chair this year. So just briefly, we have a vision that has been put together by the committee of nearly 50 people representing both public and private sector that go through this SWOT analysis and this whole process of planning, as well as the annual update. So it's quite a feat to tackle. Our vision, together we will build a thriving community through innovation, investment, in infrastructure and a strong commitment to economic growth, creating unparalleled opportunities and exceptional quality of life for all. So I'm going to briefly go through a few regional stats, remembering that we are an MSA, the Yuba City MSA, which includes both counties and the cities incorporated within the counties. So we had an uptick in the labor force as well as wages that approved over the prior year. These numbers are through 2Q24. Employment increased 1.7%. So we're moving in the right direction. It seems that everything on this slide is trending upward. And then, sure.
If you can go back. So
if I could.
If not, I will wait.
There we go.
I guess I don't understand the numbers. If the employment growth went up by 1,000 jobs, almost 951, and the labor force went up by only 100 people, then why would unemployment go up?
Well, that I don't know, because we don't measure the unemployment. We get the data directly from Unemployment Development Department or Development.
Okay, because I mean, if we're getting more jobs than people entering the labor force, you would think that that would be good.
You would, but we lose jobs, we gain jobs, et cetera.
All right, thank you.
Moving on, our poverty levels were trending up over the last 24 months, which is interesting. Median household income was up and annual wages were up. So again, what creates those factors, I am not sure. The wealth creation gross GDP 2021 over 2022 is up 7.22%. This slide has me concerned. We have always struggled with education attainment in the two-county region, but it is dropping significantly every year. This is something that we have to address regionally, and we're talking, you know, K-12 all the way up to postgraduate degrees, something that we really need to be looking at. We were in receipt of a $500,000 grant from SACOG that's going to allow us to do a workforce assessment and study and align that with the workforce needs of the community, both now and into the future. So hopefully we'll be having these discussions more closely with our local education system, as well as, you know, the CTE programs that are here and that we need to build on. So top industries by jobs, over 10 years, we have nearly 9,900 jobs have been created. And you can see they're healthcare, retail, education, accommodation, food service, agriculture, forestry, and public administration. This number always is interesting to me each year because fairly significant, 614 new business establishments in the two-county region year over year. That's fairly significant. We are growing. And then we look at our goals of the SEDS and look at the tactics that align with accomplishments. So I just have some numbers here that I wanted to share. You guys know better than anybody. We had a agricultural gross value increase of 35.7% in Yuba County during the last reporting period, and 4% in Sutter County. Beale Air Force Base executed about $68 million in local contracts in fiscal 22. A total of 10,879 jobs were created. So again, just understanding that we have these assets here, how do we take advantage of them? How do we help them? How do we make sure we don't lose them? And then I'm not gonna read this to any great degree, but we partner with about 12 partners in the Yuba-Sutter Business Consortium. And there's a lot of work that gets done with those organizations. And most specifically, directly with the EDC, We made about $426,000 in loans last year that provided an additional $362,000 in capital private investment in the region as well. So again, our loan program helps create jobs, 677 jobs, and retained 76. And then regional investment, you're all aware, Caltrans has been busy. There's been a lot of work coming into the community. Caltrans completed 3 projects totaling $245 million, and 24 additional projects are slated for the region. Yuba County, in its plan, has 6 public works projects completed, $31 million in investment, and 3 projects slated for construction. I would like to remind the board that the EDC is currently working diligently with both the Water Agency, Wheatland, OPUD to secure federal funding for the water and wastewater project in South County. Currently waiting on word on about $40 million in EPA grants that we've made application for, and another $10 million or so from EDA. So we're hopeful to get those projects completed sooner rather than later. And then regionally, Yuba-Sutter Transit replaced 6 dial-a-ride buses with 0 admission buses. Of course, you're all aware of the transit facility, $55.8 million project. I think we're short about $3 million to get that done. And then the excitement over a regional rail project for commute traffic, which would be wonderful, or passenger traffic. I know your YES team does a really good job of briefing you fairly regularly on what's going on, especially in and around economic development and housing. You can see you have about 4 pretty significant housing projects that are coming online soon. And then we always like to touch on the arts and culture. The Arts Council has 7 ongoing projects. Yuba County has their Bikeway and Pedestrian Trails Project, the Yuba Applied Research Center, and the 3 Rivers Parkway System, which are underway. Super excited about those extra amenities. And then, of course, we have the High Wheelers coming in, the Blue Zone Project, Sutter Buttes Regional Land Trust, Ellis Lake Park, and New Bullards Bar are some of our other notable regional amenities. And then with regard to safety, which is a priority within the SEDS, 14 Forward, homeless temporary shelter. The Salvation Army is currently managing that for the county, and it served 232 people in 2024 through 14 Forward. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them. I would direct your attention to Appendix 1 of the document, which includes all of your public works projects. Starting on page 10, Yuba's specific projects are listed individually and separately. And the team here does a great job of gathering all that information and getting us those updates every year. So we really appreciate the coordination there.
Thank you, Brenda. Any questions or comments from board members?
Through the chair. I noticed all the figures are merged together, and this is, quote, Sutter Yuba. And yet, Yuba has been expanding more rapidly than Sutter County for many, many years. I think it's the last 6 years we've done 400 or 500 homes. And I really would like to see the statistics split apart so that we know how fast Yuba County is growing, because we seem to be on the low side of things, and we're not letting us know just how fast they are growing. People seem to think Yuba is kind of a sleeper. It's not. It's not a stepchild of Sutter County either. And I think that we may look as to separating into a Yuba-Sutter separate because of the difference in the growth factor.
We certainly can do that with some data. Some data we can only gather for the MSA, which is the 2-county region.
Okay, well, you have to, if you're going to gather statistic for Sutter Yuba, you have to kind of let us know.
Oftentimes they're combined, period, and we can't get them separated.
And Brenda,
but when we can separate them, I'm happy to do that.
And that's the federal government defines the MSA, is that correct? Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think we can do something about that. We'll bring it back for further discussion at a later date.
Through the chair. First of all, thank you for the presentation. Love hearing all the great things going on in the area, not just in Yuba County, but a couple of items I had. I talk about it all the time because of my transportation history. A lot of the areas you're searching for to expand include rail served properties. So agriculture, health, biotechnology, advanced manufacturing, distribution, all of that. We have a huge asset I don't think we take advantage of in Yuba County. We have two railroads that run right through the heart of our county. We always think about the noise and the bad things that go along with them, but I think we need to start pushing back into, industrial jobs, things that pay a lot of money. And
definitely an asset for the county.
Yeah, and they're moving out of the more expensive cities and out of Placer County, and they're going other places, those warehouses and warehousing. And I think that always needs to be a seat at the table for transportation is our rail served properties. But it does fall right in line with your plan from 2025 to 2030. Another thing was the transit agency did not receive 6 zero emissions buses. They replaced 6 dial rides with 6 lightweight buses. They're more fuel efficient, but they are not zero
They are not zero emission?
No.
Okay, I'll make that correction. We got that information directly from transit.
Yeah, and then the anytime workforce developments talked about that Northern California Central Consortium that deals directly on workforce development. I think they should be a partner at the table. I see the list of.
They are. They're
okay.
They're at the table with the consortium.
Okay.
And I sit on their board of directors.
All right. Well, appreciate that. Thank you.
Anything else?
Oh, thank you. It was an excellent presentation. And Rachel, thank you for kicking it off. Brenda.
Okay. So with that, is there any public comment on this item?
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Motion passes.
Thank you,
Brenda and Rachel. Okay, next up we have item 144, 2025, Information Technology Approve Information Security Program and Policies Manual, and designate the Information Security Officer as the program administrator under direction of the Administrative Services Director.
Morning, Chairman, board members. My name is Joseph Oates. I'm the Information Security Officer, County of Yuba. Before you today is our Information Security Program and associated policies and seeking approval. The Information Security Policies is the formal governance of using frameworks that aligns the county's information technology policies and programs to current cybersecurity standards. There are 3 objectives for information security, and that is the confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability of the county's information systems. The policies, the program focuses on framework that was developed by NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Also, the policies and rules that we need to connect with our data sharing partners for California Department of Justice, anything to do with HIPAA, and also Child Support Services or IRS. The policies are developed clear operation standards and how we're going to manage, implement, and maintain county information systems. The program also contributes to the county's overall strategic plan as part of governance and operations. The program gives information technology oversight, maintains the security requirements, sets a roadmap on how we maintain, configure, and operate county information systems. The program and policies apply to county-owned systems, whether they're operated locally on premise or they're hosted in the cloud, maintained by third parties. The program and the policies cover all technology assets, software, hardware, servers, PCs, cloud environments, Internet of Things such as cameras, and also covers anybody that has access to these systems, whether it's county staff, contractor, or third-party service provider. So in developing these policies, we look at the frameworks and we look at, what are we trying to achieve, compliance. And part of the process is after the policies are developed, they go through a review process. And so risk management, HR looks at them to make sure there's no conflicts in policies and with other current county policies. Additionally, the policies go through review for county council, make sure there's no conflicts or legal issues or conflict with some regulations. In the next few slides, I'll highlight the policies themselves. I'll briefly talk about them. But one policy that I will go into a little more depth because of the high interest is the county will have an artificial intelligence policy. So the purpose of this policy is when development is looked at AI as a tool. There are lots of good technology AI tools that could help enhance county productivity. And so when developing this policy, trying to figure out, don't make it overly restrictive, but also to put in some safeguards so that we stay in compliance with rules and regulations. So the policy focuses on responsibilities. It also outlines what tools are available for staff to use. Also focuses on the compliance, whether it meets HIPAA, whether we're processing CGIS information, or we're dealing with California Consumer Protection Act items. The policy also looks at the responsible use, and we look at the accuracy and transparency of that policy and how we use AI tools. So for example, if I'm using generative AI and I have a document and I really want to make it better, I'll probably upload that into, let's say, ChatGPT. So one of the things you want to look at is when I upload that document, what's the contents of that document? Did I have sensitive information in there? Did I have Privacy Act information in there? So the policy gives examples and guides users on how to use that tool. The other thing we want to focus on too is the output. So when you get your response back from these AI tools, is it accurate? Did it change the meaning of a document? Did it expose you because maybe you had something that shouldn't have been on that document when you sent it up there? The policy covers that. So if the other aspect of the policy is for accuracy is, let's say it generates recitals or statistics. The policy part of that is check the accuracy of the information you're getting back from these AI tools. The other portion of this policy covers the prohibited use. So we don't want to use tools that maybe generate bias or counter to maybe make insensitive decisions. So the policy goes into detail about some of those things. So the next set of slides we'll go through briefly is all the other policies that are part of this program. Audit log policy and management. So everything we have, whether it's a server, a PC, firewall, a router, generates logs. And the policy outlines how we maintain those logs, how we process them, and what we do for the retention. You have an email policy. So that covers privacy, security of the information that's in the emails, appropriate, inappropriate use. Is focused on the management and compliance, how we process email. And also email retention, how long do we keep emails? There are items in the policy that address legal holds and retention for maybe certain emails that might exceed 2 years because of specific requirements. Next up is the acceptable use policy. And acceptable use is what is prohibited, what is not. We're using licensed software, and how we use the systems, how we transfer data. We make sure that as part of acceptable use that we have data sharing agreements, and how we maintain the confidentiality of records and how we maintain public records. And that all part of that is the acceptable use policy. Next up is the password policy. So the policy outlines password constructs, how we manage passwords, storage, you use passkey or some other encrypted technology for storing passwords. It also addresses multi-factor authentication. So, and the approved method is the Microsoft Authenticator app. Other policies, the access control policy. This goes into account management, how we enforce access on our data systems. It focuses on least privilege and some separation of duties when possible. It also addresses successful login attempts and session management. For instance, if an account has 5 consecutive unsuccessful attempts, that account will get locked out for about 30 minutes and require administrator, to approve the reopening of that account. Looks in for system notification banners. And so when you log into your system, you'll see a specific banner that says, hey, this is a government information system. The reason why it's mentioned is because depending on the system that you're accessing, there are different banners. For instance, if you're connecting into our county information, you'll have one for specific for the county. If you're connecting into a criminal justice information system, there'll be language more geared towards the criminal justice. And with child support, their focus on the banner is IRS. There's also cybersecurity awareness training. County employees will be required to have annual training. The training will be based on current trends and best practices as far as information security. Additionally, those that require more additional training beyond the annual training, such as if you work for criminal justice, you'll be required to go through CLETS information systems training. Or if you're working in child support services, they have other specific training dealing with IRS. Then there's the identification and authentication. And that goes into people, devices, and managing everything that is connected on the county network in our Active Directory. And this next slide focuses on these other policies. We have one for information security incident management. This goes into how we respond. The policy outlines incident types, roles and responsibilities when dealing with information security incident, how, what documentation would be done during those incidents. It gets into the reporting procedures and the legal and regulatory reporting on whatever information incident that we're dealing with and how we share that information. Policy for media protection, that covers your hard drives, how we maintain them, destroy them, secure them as part of any decommissioning process. How we sanitize information systems, servers, PCs. So all that is covered in the media protection. System and information integrity. This goes into how we monitor systems, what we do when there's generated alerts, what directives. We also have in there spam protection and different things to mitigate any items that would interfere with the integrity of our systems. Then there's the malware defense. This is your antivirus. Also, everything that is in there to protect systems from any types of malware. We also have patch management policy. That goes into how we patch systems, routers, firewalls, PCs, servers. For instance, software patches that are critical, we're required to get those pushed out within 2 to 7 business days. Any updates that are deemed important, the policy says we need to get them implemented within 30 days. We plan, we prioritize how those patches are done, and that's all part of the plan. And then we have hardware lifecycle. This deals with hardware acquisition through the decommissioning process. Systems that can no longer be patched or no longer supported by the vendor, we work with those departments to start the decommissioning process. So, summarize, the information security program highlights the safeguards for county data, how we process information, how we are going to mitigate for unauthorized access disruptions. It outlines the security requirements and the policies to meet those compliance, how we meet and comply with our information sharing partners, such as Department of Justice or anything related to HIPAA and also IRS. The policies clarify the roles of IT as well as all county staff. Everybody has a role to play in information security, and this program, outlines that. So, do I have any questions?
Questions and comments from board members?
Through the chair, you kept me locked out for a good half hour this morning. Your two-step system at surprise in the morning. Having been a programmer years ago, we try to test those things first. So I
will alert the help desk, sir.
Thank you. But other than that, doing a good job.
Thank you.
As someone who has a little bit of background in this, I want to thank you for your diligence and work on this. I think the policies are extremely thorough and appropriate. And so thank you. Okay, any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion?
Move to approve staff's recommendation.
Second.
Have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, motion passes. Thank you, Joseph. I know we have about maybe 20 to 30 more minutes of open session. Does the board need a quick break, or do we want to wait until closed session?
Until closed session.
Okay, great. We will move on to item 149, 2025. Human Resources and County Administrator adopt a resolution for Board of Supervisors to accept executive summary of the investigative report and take certain actions. Morning.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. Tiffany Manuel, Human Resources Director and Risk Manager. On December 19th, 2024, I brought before your board an investigation report regarding substantiated findings of inappropriate conduct by Supervisor Fuhrer, which related to multiple allegations over a period of time, with the initial allegations made in July of 2024. The findings of that investigation were found to be in violation of the county's policy and complaint procedure against harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. In accordance with government codes 54950, 54953, and 54957, your board was also presented with resolution 2024-107 to accept the executive summary of the investigation report and take actions regarding Supervisor Fuhrer's workplace misconduct. Your board approved the resolution, which included 9 action items. I'm before your board today because after interviews were completed in November 2024, in that previous investigation, Human Resources received 2 additional complaints alleging misconduct by Supervisor Fuhrer. Due to the timing of those complaints and the county's obligation to conduct a thorough investigation, Human Resources was not able to include these complaints in the original investigation. Therefore, we retained outside investigator Brooke Kozak with Shaw Law Group to conduct a separate fact-finding investigation of the additional allegations. During the second investigation, Human Resources also received a 3rd complaint alleging that Supervisor Fuhrer retaliated against a county department head. This allegation was included in the current investigation. At this time, the second investigation has concluded and the executive summary of outside investigator Ms. Kozak's findings is attached to your staff report. Ms. Kozak's findings on allegations 1 and 2 of the complaint against Supervisor Fuhrer that alleged misconduct were substantiated. However, Ms. Kozak's findings of allegation 3 related to Supervisor Fuhrer's alleged retaliation against a county department head were unsubstantiated. In reviewing those findings, allegation 2 is found to be in violation of the county's policy and complaint procedure against harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. The substantiated claims of allegations 1 and 2 involve an incident that took place prior to your board's approval of Resolution 2024-107, which took the specific actions regarding Supervisor Fuhrer's workplace misconduct as found in the first investigation. It is recommended that your board review and accept the investigator's findings as provided in your executive summary and referenced in the attached resolution provided as part of this agenda item. If the board feels there are any additional actions needed beyond what was previously approved in Resolution 2024-107, they would need to be added to this resolution. And I'll take any questions that you may have.
Questions or comments from board members?
Through the chair. One of the items stipulated was a code of ethics being adopted by the Board of Supervisors. And, you know, the county code of ethics is a framework for acceptable conduct in county or local municipality. Helps create a work environment free from unlawful discrimination and harassment. County public officials and employees must demonstrate the highest standards of morality and ethics consistent with the requirements of their position. And consistent with the law, California has extensive ethics laws to guide public officials' behavior, and local agencies sometimes adopt their own codes of ethics. I recommend that instead of a class on morals and ethics, you go with the online individual. It has a way of driving home the fact that in the code of ethics, it says it doesn't matter what your intent was. It's the results of your behavior that create the problem. And it's created a problem in our Board of Supervisors as far as morale and things. And I think we owe it to the workforce of Yuba County to provide a safe environment. And I recommend that we, instead of talking about a code of ethics, adopt a code of ethics. I presented the code of ethics for NACO, which is a nationwide county organization. I'll let it lie there.
Thank you. Any additional board comments? Okay.
Response.
Sure.
I thought we were going to go through the investigative report, so I've outlined a response to that. Since it was attached to the board documents, I assume that people have read it, so that'll be my responses in reference to. All right. It's hard to know where to start because there's so much garbage about this process, it boggles the mind. Taxpayers paid for at least 4 lawyers to be involved in this case. Instead of spending taxes on filling potholes, it's getting spent on protecting Kevin Mallon from oversight on how he wastes the public's money. So here we go again on a useless, wild goose chase to try and find something, however absurd, to try and call harassment, which clearly isn't. Let's start with the ambush process. I asked repeatedly for what we would be discussing. They refused to tell me the subject of what they were investigating until we're in the room, where I'm supposed to remember on the spot passing conversations that happened months ago. I don't have a photographic memory. The idea that I'm not credible because I don't instantly recall every word I've ever heard is absurd. So I respond that I don't remember the details in that moment, but that the conversation could very well have occurred as described. How can this investigator determine that I'm not credible when I'm not even disputing the conversation? Oh, it's because they put unreasonable pitfalls to trap you by not telling you what the discussion will be about, and then claiming you're not credible when you don't instantly recall every detail. Stupid. Perhaps they could do what is required in court, which is provide people with what will be discussed like rational human beings instead of setting a trap. So in the first 2 allegations, when I didn't dispute the words used, I was determined to be not credible. Then in the 3rd allegation, I did dispute it. The investigator claimed I contradicted myself, was inconsistent, and had negative credibility, and then agreed with me and dismissed the 3rd allegation as unsubstantiated. So when I don't respond, I'm not credible, and when I do, it's worse, except that my contradictory, inconsistent explanation meant that I was right and that the allegation was false. You see how silly and partial this investigation is. Let's return to how useless our current work policy is. I brought this up last time, but it bears repeating. The people who complain are third parties, not the person I'm talking to. They aren't the ones that are supposedly being harassed, nor are they being harassed. They are some sort of snowflake paladin thinking that they're helping a victim out that is not, in fact, a victim. The person I was speaking to is a friend of 12 years. We first started working together at a previous nonprofit long before my friend started working for the county. We regularly have dinner together and hang out at various events like her recent ribbon cutting and food bank dinner. I was literally over at her house a couple of weeks after the event alleged, playing drums with her boyfriend, who I also know from the same nonprofit from over 12 years ago. To perpetuate this silliness, we will use the alias Pedro for him. At no point did either of them complain at all in any way about our conversation. So to be clear, this complaint doesn't have a victim. It certainly isn't my long-term friend. It's someone who's fetching approval with administration by harassing me with these stupid accusations. Now let's go to the first allegation. We were at a seminar discussing $1 billion in funding for various projects. We have a shortage of beds for dangerously violent, insane people. We have to ship them down south, and we pay over $100,000 a bed for them, because there's nothing nearby to house them. Because there are insufficient beds for them, it causes mid-range disturbed people to be displaced to low security, and low security to be displaced to the streets. Building more high-security beds helps the entire sector and reduces those not receiving services living on the street. So I approached my friend and asked her about grabbing some of this grant funding to build a facility here. It would provide high-paying jobs for our area, for psych nurses and doctors, construction and building the facility, etc. A win all the way around. But instead of pursuing this opportunity that would actually help our county, the county's desire is to waste funds on complaining about mean words and not doing any useful work, except to perpetuate the circus that we've turned our board meetings into. Using the word crazy to describe violently insane people is not a harassment. Those people have a lot more serious problems than being referred to as crazy. If the word crazy hurts your feelings so much you can't do your job, you probably shouldn't work in Health and Human Services. Let me be plain. It's crazy that crazy is a bad word. These people are violently insane. Which leads to the next allegation. In the second allegation, the sentence used in the caption differs from the one recorded as being said. Did she say that she did not want to be chained to her bed, or that it was about the inmates being chained to theirs? I guess the investigator is not credible and makes inconsistent statements. Or, more realistically, lots of things were said, and you can pick and choose and try and take things out of context to promote your goal, as has been done. But let's go ahead and address both options. First off, my friend is very nice, the kind of nice that shoos flies out of the house and moves spiders outside instead of squishing them. So when she says overly nice things like she doesn't like the idea of locking violently insane people down, I get she's just trying to express her niceness and it is not dealing with the ugliness that actually exists. It's like saying we don't want people to get shot in war, but it's war. They get shot. It's violently insane people that have to be physically restrained sometimes. Whether they are drugging them against their will with sedatives or using straitjackets or arm straps to the bed, people sometimes have to be restrained. And you being nice and not wanting to think about it doesn't change that. So if that was her comment, and I responded, poor Pedro, it's because I know them both well. This isn't a random stranger who I don't know who her boyfriend is. It's a couple I regularly hang out with. More so than the person who filed this complaint. So context matters. The witness that is whining about the comment has no idea that I really do feel for the boyfriend as having to deal with the overwhelming niceness is sometimes difficult. So no sexual harassment, just a statement of actual empathy for her boyfriend. But let's say the conversation went the way that the caption claimed, and she stated she did not want to be chained to her bed. Well, gee, I didn't bring up chaining her to her bed, she did. I get it. Golden rule. Treat others like you want to be treated. A great model to determine your actions, but not useful in this situation when you're talking about people who are a danger to themselves and others. So she initiated the personal element. And though I'm certainly not claiming sexual harassment for her making it personal, she takes it from talking about violently insane people being restrained to her personal choices, at which point I respond with, poor Pedro. Again, that wasn't me being unprofessional. That was me responding to my friend who changed the subject to her personal likes and dislikes, which were irrelevant to the subject of locking up violently insane people. To repeat, this workplace policy doesn't make the culture better, it makes it worse. Which leads us to the third allegation. So because of the previous investigation, Human Resources tells me that my talking to people makes them uncomfortable, and that if I talk to people who were involved in the investigation, it could be seen as retaliatory. So I should reduce my interactions. Further, a resolution is passed ordering me not to talk to anyone but department heads. Of course, the CAO, County Council, and HR Director have all instructed me to violate said resolution, instructing me to talk to people that the resolution prohibits. But since the only purpose is to make me look bad, not actually solve problems, but to create problems for me, I guess it makes sense. A person who was involved in the previous investigation is upset because I've reduced my social interactions with her, per instructions from HR. When she attempts to make small talk with me, I decline and avoid interacting as instructed by HR. Now she's upset. Of course, this makes the work environment more tense and less cooperative. Duh. When you weaponize human resources so any interaction is cause for punishments, people are going to interact less. The idea that not responding to good morning qualifies as workplace retaliation that should be punishable is crazy. See, I really like that word. Because sadly, it applies to so much of what goes on in county government. The bad policies, instructions, and resolutions leads to reduced interaction. This is bad for our county government, and that rests squarely on the shoulders of our failed CAO and a board that allows him to continue this stupidity. The fact that this allegation was unsubstantiated after basically calling me a liar and then agreeing with me that I wasn't being retaliatory shows what a waste of time and money this has been. So in conclusion, we as the county government regularly waste our taxpayers' money on silly sideshow circuses instead of building bypasses and fixing traffic. When I attempt to exert control over our wasteful spending by providing oversight, we get these crazy allegations so as to sabotage any attempt to get our county spending back on track. More money after bad. It's disappointing and disgusting. I hope that seeing how abused this entire process has been with no merit whatsoever, you'll support my motion. I move that we rescind the resolution on December 19th, 2024. I'd like to see us stop using HR as a bludgeon to further political maneuvers and instead work for the citizens and spend our time and money improving their lives instead of making this swamp even more toxic.
To the chair, I have a question that NACO put in its ethics in county government. Why do counties need a code of ethics? Most people interpret ethical conduct in black and white, and there are right things to do, and then there are wrong things to do. However, upon entering public office, many public officials quickly realize the vast array of ethical dilemmas fall into a menacing gray area where the right thing to do is not easily apparent. Making the right choice is in a difficult situation is not always so straightforward. In many instances, just the appearance of wrongdoing, whether illegal or unethical activity has actually occurred, can create major problems such as this. My question is why we haven't come up with a code of ethics to help solve this problem.
We have an ad hoc committee that is working on that. So per direction from this board.
Checks in the mail.
So
through the chair, is there anything of what Supervisor Fuhrer said that you would like for me to respond to?
Yes. Did the person that he said that to file the complaint? Or was it a third-party person that overheard what he said that filed the complaint?
I don't think we can talk about that, and I don't think it's relevant. It's against our policy. I mean, there was a complaint made that rose to the level of investigation, and that's what we have to investigate, whether it comes from the individual person or a person who is attending or is there with the individual doesn't make a difference. And I don't think we can identify who the complainants were.
Okay. There is a motion on the table before public comment and before I entertain a second. I want to confirm with council, I don't believe that particular item is agendized, so I'm not even sure if we can take a motion on that or can we? Because it's kind of related to this item, but so I don't know where the line is.
Right. And was there even a second on that motion?
No, and I guess we could ask that first and before legal counsel weighs in. Is there a second on Supervisor Fuhrer's motion? Okay. Then seeing no second on that, then I guess I don't need legal counsel's advice. So any public comment on this item? Okay. Seeing none, is there a motion from the rest of the board, maybe for the recommendation?
Move to second, or move to accept the recommendation of staff.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. First and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay. Did you get that, Mary? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to ordinances and public hearings. If you challenge in court the action or decision of the Yuba County Board of Supervisors regarding a zoning, planning, land use, or environmental protection matter made at any hearing described in this notice, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at such hearing or in written correspondence delivered to the Yuba County Board of Supervisors at or prior to such hearing. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes per individual group. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing for item 108, 2025. Community Development and Services, ordinance, hold public hearing, waive reading, and adopt ordinance to repeal and reenact Title 11 Development Code and County Zoning Map and determine project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, Section 15183. Again, Rachel.
Good morning again, Chairman Bradford, members of the board, Rachel Downs. I am one of your deputy directors out of Community Development. And sorry, there was two open, so I apologize. I want to make sure I have the right one here. The request today is before your board is to consider minor amendments, modifications, and corrections to the Yuba County Development Code, zoning map, and land use regulations. But before I get started, I want to provide a little background and context. So in June of 2011, your board, or the county board at the time, adopted the Yuba County 2030 General Plan and associated EIR Environmental Impact Report. In 2015, the board also adopted the Yuba County Development Code and zoning map. This zoning and land use ordinance is used to implement the goals and the policies of the general plan. In order to be responsive in an ever-changing development environment, we really treat the development code as a living document. Our staff works in it every single day, and frankly, sometimes when people bring projects forward, we recognize minor errors, and or there's just items to be improved upon once you're working in that document frequently. And so on February 19th of 2025, these recommended annual changes were presented to your planning commissioners who voted in favor of the recommended changes, and now we are presenting this to your board to approve and accept. I'm going to go over and review some of those change highlights with you. First is the incorporation of SB 9, or otherwise known as the California Home Act, into our ordinance, and clarified that each lot may have up to 2 units configured as either one duplex per lot with no accessory dwelling unit, ADU, or a single family residence with 1 ADU. Ultimately, that allows basically one lot to then be subdivided in half and then 2 units on each of those, whereas the code was written a little confusing previously, where it was allowing up to 6 units. And so what we've done there is just align our development standards, our development code with state law. And then next is signage in the right-of-way. Unpermitted signage has been gathering of recent and historically creates visual clutter and decreases line of sight, which causes safety issues on our roadways throughout the county. And again, this is in the right-of-way. So our planning and code enforcement departments have made a concerted effort to remove some of this unpermitted signage, and staff has created a process incorporated into our development code that allows nonprofits and schools to place temporary signs in the county's right-of-way through an encroachment permit. But again, unpermitted signage in the right-of-way is something that creates a traffic safety hazard and is not allowable. And so we've clarified that section of our development code. Additionally, the PSPP, acronym for Plan Sign Permit Program, is another significant improvement this year that is updating this program and standardizing requirements for digital billboards, controlling the placement and reducing visual clutter. Clarification on this one, so instead of, so when there is a digital billboard, there is an entitlement required, and so for the signs that have thus been permitted, the Planning Commission would set conditions of approval. So instead of having to kind of customarily put conditions of approval into any of these, what we've done at recommendation from the Planning Commission is just adopt those standards that they were assigning in the entitlement process as just a standard in the development code. Okay, and then lastly on this slide, you'll see an update to political signage. And by update, I mean that nothing significant has changed in this realm with the exception of formally incorporating this into the development code, whereas these same standards, the same process, the same time frames of political signage, their allowed placement and everything was just overseen through a memorandum of understanding that was, a memorandum that was issued through the Public Works Department. So instead of having kind of a lesser formal memorandum, we've just adopted that as a formal standard in the development code. Okay. And on the next slide here, landscape care and maintenance. Continued landscape care and maintenance is vital to the aesthetic appeal and modern appearance of a community. Previously, standards for landscape care and maintenance that were included in the development code were only applicable to commercial, multifamily, and industrial areas. We've expanded that to apply to all development types, including single-family residential homes. which basically means, let's take Goldfields Ranch as an example. As LGI is building out that subdivision, they will have a landscape plan that's reviewed and approved by our development team, and they must install their landscape accordingly. If a resident, after purchase of the home, moves in and then removes that landscaping, this landscape care and maintenance section will allow us to enforce the standards that were established when those homes were built. And the reason I clarify that is this section doesn't necessarily apply to our historic neighborhoods in the communities of Linda or Olivehurst, where when those homes were built, these standards weren't in place. So hopefully that provides clarity on that section. And then additionally, special events in the Valley Growth Boundary. The intention of this policy or this section was to allow events on developed properties. We've recognized that the language wasn't very clear, and so we've shored it up a little bit and just clarified that special events within the Valley Growth Boundary can happen on developed parcels, which then provides for sanitation, paved parking, as well as established driveways, as compared to having special events on undeveloped parcels where there are not those items in the Valley Growth Boundary. Okay, so reduced setbacks for residential estate and rural residential properties outside of the Valley Growth Boundary. The Planning Commission recommended this change to staff to ensure small rural lots are able to fully enjoy their property and not be burdened by the robust setbacks that were associated with larger rural properties. This allows for greater flexibility in a resident's development of their rural property while still retaining that character. And then I want to clarify that this does not apply to properties that are within the CAL FIRE state responsibility area or those higher fire severity zones. Just a couple more here. Another section that we've updated or recommend updating is outdoor retail sales. This section, the intent originally for this section was to allow, can we envision like a Home Depot or a Lowe's that has wheelbarrows and plants and all their lovely garden supplies that are out this time of year. We can manifest that for Yuba County. I see it, it's happening, right? Or a Costco that wants to have their fruit trees out front of their store, hypothetically, to showcase this time of year. That was the intent of this section, but because of the lack of clarity in the way that it was written, and then now we're recommending an updated verbiage to it, is that outdoor sales were done on undeveloped properties again. So again, you don't have the sanitation facilities, you don't have paved driveways or parking and things of that nature. So on undeveloped properties, that's not really where we want to see pop-up outdoor sales. The intent of this section is to allow outdoor retail sales at our retailers that can then bring merchandise outside in a controlled manner. Okay, and then auto repair in the rural commercial zone. This one's pretty straightforward. This previously required an entitlement, and just allowing for auto repair to be principally permitted in the rural commercial zone. And then also you have parkland dedication for subdivision maps. This recommendation is to allow the planning director to have discretion when there are residential developments that are 50 or fewer lots, to make some discernment and analysis of the development. Instead of automatically requiring a small park to be developed, there may be times where it makes more sense to collect in lieu of fees and actually put that toward a larger regional park. Okay, and as I mentioned, there were a handful of zoning changes or fixes that are recommended. Some of these are because they're just more in alignment with the surrounding neighborhood or the existing use. And then frankly, some of these are just zoning errors that we continue to catch from since 2015. Like I said, when people bring projects forward that are on their property, sometimes we recognize that there was unfortunately an error. There's a lot of parcels in the county, and in some of these, the zoning just wasn't aligned with their general plan designation. So this is your countywide vicinity map. I'm going to break it down a little bit by community. So first, Supervisor Messick in the Foothills. This is along Marysville Road. This is where the cemetery is. And this property was, I believe, zoned rural residential, and rural commercial is actually more appropriate for that use. And then in the property adjacent, there is a existing commercial along the frontage of that property. And so we're recommending that that be rural commercial, and then retaining the rest of that parcel for rural residential 5-acre minimums. Along Highway 70, you'll see at the top here, if I can show you this one, these are smaller parcels that are currently zoned general commercial. General commercial is a zoning designation that's better suited for large format retail. As you can see here, these are very irregularly shaped parcels that are right along the highway. And neighborhood mixed use is a zoning designation that's more suited for that area, while it does still allow for both commercial and residential. So really we're increasing the development flexibility of those properties, not reducing it in any way. We're just recommending a different neighborhood mixed-use zoning that allows for both residential and commercial. And then along Northfield Road, you can actually see it's like the darker green one here. This is the county-owned surplus property that had a variety of zonings kind of cobbled together in that. And so we're recommending a singular commercial zoning for that property, which is more consistent with your board's vision for the development of that commercial corridor. And then along Highway 65, you have Highway 65 and Bradshaw kind of right here in the middle. There are a number of parcels that were zoned agricultural residential 10-acre minimums, whereas in fact these parcels are only about 2 to 3 acres in size. And so rural estate is a zoning designation that's just better suited for their existing use and their existing size. All right. And so in conclusion, the Environmental Impact Report, EIR, was prepared and certified for the 2030 General Plan, and staff has determined that the Development Code updates and zoning map edits are exempt from further environmental review in accordance with CEQA. So we recommend that the board adopt the ordinance repealing and enacting Title 11 of the Development Code, amend the zoning map, and determine the project exempt from CEQA. Happy to take any questions or comments.
Questions and comments from board members?
I had a question about what considered special events for bare land. Obviously, the UNS Festival is the intent there to not have something that's 1,000 people because of the sanitation situation. But as far as if people want to fly their ultralights, or if people want to have a quinceañera on bare land, what qualifies as a special event?
Yeah, just by way of example, we've been approached for various community events or like flea market-esque type events. And so even in those situations, you have the driveway is a great example. You have the public coming off the roadway. They're maybe not the best ways to turn in and out of a vacant parcel. There might not be a driveway. There may be a culvert ditch that they're driving over. All of these things that when you establish a use on a property that our development team looks really closely at, parking, et cetera. And again, sanitation facilities can be one of the examples. Those are all the things that we look at when you're establishing a use on a property. And those things aren't in existence on these vacant properties. And so, again, the intent of the development code was to allow special events when there's an established use.
What triggers a special event? Is it 5 people? Is it 50 people? Is it 500 people? What triggers making it a special event as opposed to just being on my bare land?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and tap in Kevin Perkins to help me define that one for you.
Through the chair, Kevin Perkins, Yuba County Community Development. So one bit that I want to clarify on this, in our valley growth boundary, special events are permitted by right. And so the reason we want to get the clarification is there's been a few instances where there's properties that are zoned commercial that events were happening on these properties that didn't have, as Rachel described, the facilities built in inherently. So we just wanted to kind of get a grip on that. In our Foothill district, however, special events are, there's a better definition for it. So in our valley growth boundary, there really isn't a definition of special events, what qualifies that, like number of people, et cetera, whereas in our Foothill region, there is. It's based off of the number of people attending the events and also whether or not there's going to be overnight stays, which determines whether or what level of entitlement process the event will go through. But in our valley growth boundary, it's not well defined at all.
Through the chair. So just a couple questions, Kevin, these might be more for you. On the 5 acres or less or 5 acres or more, that 20-foot versus 10-foot setback, on those small properties, those 6, 7, 8 acres, I don't think it makes much difference in that 5 acre personally, but you get to the 20, 30, 40 acre properties, you're already pretty far away from anybody. I don't know if we need to have it be so far even on those, the 20 feet back on the setback, because you're already far away from people. You know, most time you buy a piece of property, you're not having everything built right on your property line, but I know it's more important for the 5 to 10 acre people that they might be using up all of their space. And I've been through the process before where they look at the neighboring wells and things like that are in existence are already closer, and septics are already closer to that lot line than what the code allows for. But I think that might need to be looked at again in the future, just for those smaller lots. I don't see how it really affects the big lots, but yeah. And then with the ordinance change on allowable businesses, like the automotive repair, how many people are we going to affect with these changes that we sign or that we approve? Is there a number of businesses in operation that are currently going to be put out of business when we approve this?
No, through the chair, this actually would allow more opportunity for additional businesses. This won't put out any additional businesses. What it's doing is right now in the rural commercial zoning designation, if someone wanted to start an auto repair shop, they'd have to actually go through a conditional use permit that would cost close to $10,000 and have to go to our planning commission. Through discussions with our planning commission, they want to make sure that process is a little bit easier, so there was more opportunities in our Foothill and non-urbanized areas to allow for more potential auto repair without having to go through a conditional use permit.
And that goes for the other industries that are affected by the changes too. Like, is there anybody that's operating on a public space that won't be able to operate anymore? I just want to make sure we're not affecting somebody's ability to feed their family.
No, do you want me to answer that? Yeah, happy to clarify as well. So to Kevin's point, even if hypothetically it was reversed, where we were making the development standard more cumbersome or more restrictive, then if there's an existing business, then we would consider that legal non-conforming. And so it wouldn't, in the event that we do make changes, that if there is an existing business, that doesn't necessarily affect them directly.
Thank you.
Through the chair, one bit of clarification that I wasn't really clear on before is in the valley growth boundary with the fairs. That's just on allowing it as by right. Like there still is a process for someone to be able to have those types of events. It's just not allowed by zoning right, which gives staff the opportunity to make sure that ingress egress is appropriate for the event, and that fire, life, health, safety, welfare checks are done before the event happens. And so that was really the clarity on that part is before it was just allowed by right, and staff didn't have any ability to determine that, or any ability to check to see if it met the requirements, because it was supposed to be inherent that there was a business already in place that had a paved driveway, had good ingress, egress. And so I guess to your point, Supervisor House, that in that case, that's the only really restriction that we're having in the development code that, to your point, but there is still the ability to do it. It's just a more elevated process.
I have a question through the chair. Rachel, the property on Marysville Road, is the property owner, have you been in contact with the property owner on that? Is it more than just the cemetery?
Through the chair, we have been in contact with the property owner. It's Hyatt Ranch, and they were the ones that were talking about this. They've run into some issues with a lender on their commercial cattle operation and their construction business on the zoning being rural residential, even though what they're doing, it being allowed in the rural residential zoning designation, their lender was having issues with it. And so we suggested that since they're allowed to do what they're doing anyway in the rural commercial, that staff didn't have an issue with upgrading the zoning, the rural commercial to help them out.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair. On this landscape care and maintenance, do we have a ordinance that with a stiff fine for using the runoff drains for blowing leaves and grass in? It sounds like common sense, but common sense is a little short out there for some of our landscapers.
Yes, I'm not really sure right now in terms of water quality, what kind of
they're not trash receptacles.
Yeah, it's good feedback, and as Supervisor House also provided the feedback about relooking at some of the setbacks in our rural areas, that these are things that if your board's fine with, we will absolutely look at and bring forward next year.
Okay. Thank you.
Any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Waive the reading and adopt the ordinance to repeal and reenact the Title 9, Title 11 Development Code and Coding Zoning Map.
Second that.
Okay, thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor House,
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhrer,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
Yes.
Supervisor Messick.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So next is correspondence as listed on the agenda, and then we will move to board and staff member reports. Supervisor Vasquez.
Well, for those of you who'd like to take the Lower Colorado trip, it's a great experience, but there's 19 stops in 3 days, and you better bring your walking shoes but it was quite an eye-opening experience, and seeing all that water out in the middle of the desert.
Okay, Supervisor House.
Yeah, through the chair, just lots of new onboarding to all the committees that I've been assigned to, which is good. Additional meetings outside of the regular monthly and quarterly meetings, which is great. But I also did want to report out that we did have our ad hoc committees, and over the past several weeks, we reviewed materials from the draft code of conduct and we had 2 ad hoc committees with their committee meetings with the county administrator, where its merits were deliberated and alternatives discussed. The ad hoc committee has arrived at the decision to recommend to the full board that no further action be taken on regard to the proposed code of conduct. The county already has rules and policies in place that address appropriate employee behavior and conduct in regards to board member conduct. Not only are we bound by these same rules and policies, but we have also taken an oath of office that we are ultimately held to by the voters who put us in this position and put their faith in us to represent them. So additionally, we are held to higher standards as it is for reporting for transparency on things like conflicts of interest. We're held to all the county codes. December showed that all of the policies have already been, we're already subject to those policies. So any restriction could be circumvention or pressure for a politician. We also asked that in December, the board asked that they bring back a elected official code of conduct, and what came back was a Board of Supervisors code of conduct that didn't address all the all the elected officials, it just addressed us. But we're already held to that higher standard. We're in place from the representation for the voters, and at this time, we don't want to push forward with an additional document.
Thank you for that update. Supervisor Fuhrer?
Probably used up most of my time, but there is a rescue mission dinner appreciation at the 530 building on Friday evening. And so it's a great organization doing good work in the community. I should support it.
Supervisor Messick?
Thank you. I had a booth at the home show this weekend, Friday afternoon, Saturday and Sunday, and had a lot of Yuba County people participate. I raffled off the Tricky Yuba book. Can't remember the name of the guy that won it, but anyway, he was happy. He's picking it up today at the water agency. Had a lot of really good feedback from people. I'd like to thank Sarah at OES for providing me a lot of handouts to give to people on evacuations and the code red. So yeah, it was a real well turnout. I thank you, Supervisor Fuhrer, for letting me know about that dinner. We also have a dinner coming up on Saturday night at the 530. I've mentioned a few times, which is the Yuba County Search and Rescue fundraising dinner. They still have a few tickets left, I believe. It's a really good event and supports a great cause. That's it.
Thank you. Council?
I have nothing to report.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, maybe I'll follow up on the conversation from earlier and try not to take it personally, although Supervisor Fuhrer did a good job of mentioning me several times directly, but really I kind of represent the organization, and ultimately I'm administering the policies that the board sets, right? And I administer, it's not just myself, it's our whole organization. So you have a staff of 900 people that are trying to administer these policies set by the board. And if there's ever need to adjust those board policies, by all means, please let me know so that we can work on them. So.
Thank you, Kevin. Mary?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay. In the interest of time, I'm just going to mention one thing, and that is the carrier of last resort effort that AT&T and other phone providers are working on in the state. I had a good meeting with AT&T recently, and I'm on the RCRC ad hoc committee on the topic. There are certainly, now that the legislation to actually move forward with this has been released, I know RCRC has some concerns about it, and I certainly share those concerns, even though I agree with, I think, the ultimate end goal of trying to get copper out of areas where it's not necessary to save costs and allow AT&T to put those savings towards fiber. We have to be very careful how we do that, and so I will continue to work on that, and as specifics come up, I'll report them back to the board. I know there is a request from RCRC for our board to send a letter of opposition to the current bill, so I know I forwarded that on, and maybe it'll be on a future agenda for us to consider. For everything else that's going on, as with my fellow board members, there's a lot. I would just point you towards supervisorbradford.org/myweek to read about all the other stuff that I've been doing. So with that, we are going to have some closed session as listed on the agenda. And then we will, when we come, then we'll recess until 1:30 when we have a cost accounting hearing. We're going to go ahead and take a break until 11:35. We'll start promptly at 11:35 in the closed session. So thank you.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.
Hi, I'm Neil Goforth of Comfort Keepers of Yuba, Sutter, and Nevada counties. Caring for elders or even yourself has challenges. Comfort Keepers of Yuba, Sutter, and Nevada counties can help you address today's issues and plan for tomorrow with in-home and specialized care for you or your family members. Call us at 530-749-8800. Comfort Keepers of Yuba, Sutter, and Nevada counties.